Second Foundation, by Isaac Asimov. 1. The Mule's regime after the fall of the First Foundation was more unified and controlled than the previous commercial empire. The Mule's official title was First Citizen of the Union. Flawn Pritcher, once a captain in the underground Democratic opposition, fought against the Mule but was converted. Now, as Lieutenant General, he is returning from his fifth major expedition. He enters the palace grounds and walks towards the Mule's room. The Mule, a mutant with mental powers, senses Pritcher's emotions and welcomes him. They discuss the search for the Second Foundation, with Pritcher believing it doesn't exist and the Mule knowing otherwise. The Mule plans to send Pritcher and Bale Channies, a young man from Kalgan, to search for the Second Foundation. The Mule warns Pritcher about Channis's charm and ambition. Channis arrives, and the Mule informs him of his mission. The Mule reflects on his own appearance and power. He senses Channis's anger and warns him of the consequences of disobedience. The first speaker of the Second Foundation addresses the Executive Council and discusses the Mule's failed attempt to locate them. They realize their vulnerability and the fortuitous events that stopped the Mule. They have held off the Mule using unorthodox methods but acknowledge the unstable situation. The first speaker suggests allowing the Mule to find them, in a sense. 2. The ship was almost ready, but they still needed a destination. The Mule suggested returning to Trantor, but Pritcher disagreed. He found Bale Channis in the navigation room, and Channis expressed his excitement about a possible coincidence. Pritcher was cold and uninterested. Channis suggested analyzing the problem deductively and determining what they were looking for. Pritcher reluctantly agreed that they were looking for the Second Foundation. Channis explained that they needed to find a world that was strong in mental skills but weak in physical science. Pritcher questioned this assumption, but Channis argued that the Second Foundation must be hidden among the broken galactic empire. Pritcher sarcastically suggested that Channis provide a list of all the worlds that fit this description. Channis mentioned Tazenda as a possibility, but Pritcher dismissed it because it was not in the right location. Channis pointed out the connection between Tazenda and Star's End, and Pritcher agreed to look at the lens to investigate further. They discovered that Tazenda was the other end of the galaxy from Trantor and seemed to fit the criteria for the Second Foundation. Pritcher realized that Channis had made the decision to go to Tazenda without consulting him and was alarmed. Channis explained that he was concerned about the possibility of the Second Foundation having agents on Kalgan and wanted to keep their destination a secret. Pritcher reluctantly accepted this but insisted on being consulted in the future. Channis then discovered a hypertracer on the communication circuit, indicating that they could be followed anywhere. He instructed the chief engineer to put it back and forget about it. The ship continued its journey towards Tazenda, and Pritcher pondered the implications of their mission. 3. On the marginal world of Rossum, life for the peasants was hard but peaceful. They had their bread, milk, and meat from the tough native grain and small goat-like animals. The arrival of soldiers from Tazenda, a ruling world, brought changes to their lives. Taxes were imposed, but the peasants learned to hide their assets. Trading with Tazenda brought some benefits, and life continued on the harsh planet. One day, a ship from outer space landed on Narovi's farm. He excitedly prepared to greet the visitors, hoping to win their favor. General Han Pritcher and Channis, the visitors, were cautious but willing to meet the elders of the village. They believed that among the rulers of Tazenda, there may be members of the Second Foundation they were seeking. The elders arrived and invited them to the meeting hall. At the first speakers' meeting, concern over the Mule's presence was discussed. They were uncertain of his intentions and the threat he posed. Despite their plan to handle his men, the Mule himself remained a mystery. 4. The elders of Rossum were surprisingly dignified and authoritative. They sat around a table like contemplative thinkers, with most of them appearing older but not necessarily in age. The two outsiders, Pritcher and Channis, sat at the head of the table and absorbed the contrasting atmosphere. After a frugal meal, the elders became more informal and curious, bombarding Pritcher with questions. Pritcher found himself answering at length, warming up to the naive provincials. The elders had discussions among themselves in an archaic version of the universal galactic language. When Channis asked about Tazenda, the elders grew silent, and Pritcher quickly interjected, praising the loyalty of the elders. The elders expressed their loyalty to the lords of Tazenda and their fear of punishment for treason. Pritcher inquired about arranging an audience with the governor, only to find out that the governor was expected and had been waiting for them. Later, Pritcher and Channies discussed their uncertainties and fears about meeting the governor. Pritcher secretly contacted their ship for an update. The governor of Rossum arrived with minor ostentation and had a meal with Pritcher and Channies. During the conversation, Pritcher became increasingly anxious about the governor tampering with their minds. The governor expressed interest in their ship and suggested they proceed to Tazenda after he examines their credentials and inspects their ship. Channies requested 48 hours to repair the ship, which the governor reluctantly agreed to. The audience ended without further unpleasantness. Back in their quarters, Pritcher questioned his own emotions and loyalty, finding that he still felt absolute loyalty to the Mule. He communicated with their ship and felt a wave of relief upon receiving a response. 5. Channies and Pritcher discuss the governor and their suspicions about the Second Foundation. Channies suggests that they wait for the Second Foundation to make a deal with them. Pritcher suddenly accuses Channies of treason and points a blaster at him. Channies questions Pritcher's evidence and reasons. Pritcher reveals that he believes Channies is a Second Foundationer and that he had been tampered with. Channies argues against this belief and accuses Pritcher of being under the influence of the Second Foundation. Just as Pritcher is about to shoot Channies, the Mule enters the room and stops him. The Mule reveals that he had placed a hypertracer on their ship and explains his theory that Channies is a Second Foundationer. Channies and the Mule engage in a mental battle, with Channies revealing that he has released Pritcher from the Mule's control. The Mule drops the blaster and Pritcher falls into a deep sleep. The Mule acknowledges his mistake and the chapter ends with a glimpse of his triumphant emotions. 6. Channies and the Mule face off against each other. Channies knows that the Mule is more powerful and that he would lose in a test of endurance. Channies tries to gain time and asks the Mule why he came to Tazenda. The Mule refuses to explain and mocks Channies for his lack of curiosity. Channies tries to talk about the Second Foundation and its importance, but the Mule dismisses it, claiming that it is destroyed. The Mule then attacks Channies mentally and physically, overpowering him. Channies reveals that Rossum, not Tazenda, is the location of the Second Foundation, and the Mule plans to attack it. The first speaker of the Second Foundation arrives and reveals that Rossum is a decoy, and the real Second Foundation is safe. The Mule realizes he has been tricked and his mind is changed. Channies is left with his original mind restored and knowledge of the true location of the Second Foundation. 7. Arcadia Darrell, a young novelist, is frustrated with her name and longs to be known simply as Arcady. She sits in her armchair, contemplating her appearance and complaining about her parents' lack of imagination. Arcadia is 2 days past 14 and wishes her parents would recognize her adulthood by calling her Arcady. Her father jokingly asks what she will do when she's 25 and all the boys think she's 30. Arcadia looks at herself in the mirror, dissatisfied with her appearance. She tries to mimic the exotic look of women from other star systems but struggles due to her hands getting in the way. She then contemplates her face, finding it too fat. She tries various facial expressions to appear more mature and sophisticated but is unhappy with her results. Arcadia is working on her composition titled, The Future of Selden's Plan, using a transcriber, a compact and adaptable writing device. She finds it elegant and charming and appreciates the beautiful penmanship it produces. However, she accidentally leaves the transcriber on, and her father overhears her conversation with someone at the window. A young man named Pelias appears at Arcadia's window, attempting to enter her room. Arcadia insists that he can't come in and threatens to call for help. Pelias tries to convince her to let him in, but Arcadia remains cautious. Eventually, she allows him inside, and they join her father downstairs. Arcadia's father, Dr. Darrell, apologizes for the confusion and introduces Pelias. They discuss Arcadia's behavior, and Pelias asks her about her opinion on going to windows instead of doors. Arcadia explains her reasoning, using Salvor Hardin's sayings as a reference. Pelias finds her perspective intriguing. After Pelias and Dr. Darrell leave, Arcadia returns to her transcriber and resumes working on her composition. As she contemplates the future of Selden's plan, she reflects on the recent events and her encounter with Pelias. 8. In Selden's room, the second foundation exists. It is a room dedicated to pure science, dealing only with mathematical concepts. In the room, there is the Prime Radiant, holding the complete Selden plan, and the first speaker, the 12th guardian of the plan. A young student enters the room, and the first speaker explains the purpose of their presence. The first speaker emphasizes the importance of mental science and the need for a civilization based on it. The student learns about the Prime Radiant and its ability to be attuned to the mind. The first speaker reveals that the plan is not complete or correct and that each generation has contributed to its development. The student asks how changes are made, and the first speaker explains the rigorous process of review and examination. The first speaker then asks the student to explain the aim of the plan, which is to establish a civilization based on mental science. The student also mentions the need to hide the existence of the second foundation from the first foundation to maintain the randomness of human actions. The first speaker sets a problem for the student to solve, which relates to the Mule's impact on the plan. The first speaker reveals that the first foundation knows about the second foundation and that the plan's success is still uncertain. 9. In Dr. Darrell's house, a group of individuals gathered for a purpose beyond socializing. Dr. Darrell, Pelias Anther, Joel Terbor, Dr. Elvet Semick, and Homir Munn discussed the danger they faced and the need to gather brainwave data. They analyzed the brainwave patterns of various individuals, including government officials and intellectuals, and discovered a common pattern that indicated tampering. They suspected the involvement of the Second Foundation and discussed the possibility of obtaining information from the Mule's palace on Kalgan. Reluctantly, Munn agreed to embark on this mission during his vacation. Another decision was made by Arcadia, but it will be revealed later. 10. A week had passed on the Second Foundation, and the first speaker was pleased with the student's findings. The student expressed concern about the changing psychology of the First Foundation. Previously, they were driven by uncertainty and tension, but now that they know of the Second Foundation, they have become complacent and reliant on the guardianship of the plan. Additionally, the student warns of a potential minority reaction of hostility towards the Second Foundation. Furthermore, with the Second Foundation becoming a part of the First Foundation's environment, there is a possibility that they may shift their focus to psychology. The first speaker reveals that this change has already occurred. The student feels humiliated by his lack of knowledge and questions if he would have known this had he lived outside. The first speaker assures the student that his seclusion and education were necessary for his development. The student admits defeat, believing there is no solution to the problem. The first speaker explains that they have been forced into a course of action involving low probabilities and dangerous assumptions. They have kept the situation stable but acknowledge that the actions of a single individual could destroy the plan. If discovered, not only the plan but also their physical selves would be destroyed. The student remarks that their solution seems more like a desperate guess. The first speaker predicts that the crisis will occur within the year. The student accepts this and leaves. The first speaker contemplates whether any of Selden's heritage will survive when the year ends. 11. Homir Munn prepares for his summer trip on the Unimara. He sets off alone, feeling a bit resentful. However, he soon realizes he is not alone when his niece, Arcadia, reveals herself as a stowaway. Dr. Darrell receives a letter from Arcadia explaining her decision to join Homir on his trip. Despite the initial shock, Homir accepts her presence and they continue their journey to Kalgan. Arcadia shares her dreams of becoming a historical novelist and mentions her desire to visit Trantor. Homir is hesitant but eventually agrees to consider it after their business on Kalgan is done. The chapter ends with their arrival near Kalgan. 12. Kalgan, known as the Pleasure World, thrived as an amusement industry and remained stable throughout the changing sectors of the galaxy. However, when the Mule, a conqueror, came to power, Kalgan fell. After the Mule's death, Kalgan struggled to recover and was ruled by a succession of lords. The current lord, Stettin, is eager for action and believes that Kalgan can match the Foundation, a powerful entity in the galaxy. Stettin discusses this with his first minister, Myrus, and mentions a Foundation visitor named Homir Munn. Lady Kalia, Stetten's companion, interrupts their conversation and Stetten dismisses her. Stetten contemplates his future plans, including the possibility of marrying into a historic Foundation family. Kalia asks to see Mun's daughter, wanting to learn more about the Foundation, but Stetten rejects the idea. Despite this, Stetten's mood softens and he allows Kalia to have her way. They embrace as Stetten considers taking her to the Foundation as a conqueror. 13. Arcadia felt triumphant. Her life had drastically changed since Pelias Anther had come to her window. She had experienced the grandeur of the Central Theatre, shopped along the flowered path, and even changed her appearance with a new hairstyle and gold-treated hair. But the best part was being in the presence of Lord Stetten's mistress, Lady Kalia. However, Kalia didn't quite fit Arcadia's idea of a powerful and glamorous woman. Nevertheless, Arcadia engaged in polite conversation with her, complimenting her pearls and discussing the Foundation. Lady Kalia seemed intrigued by the Selden plan and the traitors, and Arcadia took this opportunity to share her uncle's belief that the Mule's conquest had disrupted the Selden plan and that the Second Foundation might be supporting Kalgan. Lady Kalia found it all complicated, and Arcadia gave up trying to explain further. Meanwhile, Lord Stetten was frustrated by his meeting with Homir Mun from the Foundation, who wanted to enter the Mule's palace. Stetten, intrigued by what Arcadia had said, became suspicious and sent out orders for war games and granted Mun permission to enter the palace. Homir Mun, however, was not pleased with this unexpected turn of events. Arcadia, on the other hand, was delighted with the outcome, thinking that her plan was working. 14. Polly placed breakfast on the table, keeping an eye on the table news recorder. She clucked her tongue at the news and expressed her frustration to Daryl. She talked about the trouble caused by the Kalganese and reminisced about past wars. Daryl was preoccupied with his own thoughts and didn't pay much attention. He was contemplating becoming Administrator of Research and Development. He had always fought against the enemy, but now he was unsure if he should take on this new role. Meanwhile, Arcadia was waiting anxiously in the executive offices for Flomir Mun. Lady Kalia was also there, but she was quickly dismissed by Lord Stetten. Arcadia sensed something was wrong and followed Lady Kalia. Lady Kalia helped her escape and gave her money and jewels. Arcadia realized that Lady Kalia was a member of the Second Foundation and decided to run away. She took an air taxi to the spaceport and decided she couldn't go back to the Foundation. She knew the location of the Second Foundation and couldn't risk her own life to warn others. 15. Trantor, once a grand city, now a shadow of its former self, is home to a small community of farmers. In the busy spaceport on the outskirts, the massive machines are almost noiseless as they shift nucleons to power their movements. The port is mostly dedicated to the machines and the people who serve them, with only 5% reserved for the travelers passing through. Arcadia Daryl, a 14-year-old girl, finds herself in the midst of the bustling crowd, feeling the weight of her unique knowledge of the Second Foundation. She is approached by a man who urges her to use the ticket machine. Arcadia realizes she is standing in front of it, inserts her money, and chooses the destination of Trantor, her birthplace. However, she is short on credits and the ticket is not dispensed. In a moment of panic, Arcadia grabs the ticket and runs, aware that she is being pursued by unknown strangers. She collides with a plump man who holds onto her arm. The man, along with his wife, takes pity on Arcadia and offers her help. They discover that she is from Trantor and that her uncle has been arrested. Arcadia explains that she is running away from someone and is afraid. As they wait in their designated square amidst the crowd, an announcement is made that the airport is being searched for a fugitive, causing panic among the travelers. The voice warns that no one must move until the search is complete. Arcadia realizes that she is the one being hunted, but is unsure of the reason. With the help of the man and his wife, she manages to avoid detection during the search. On board the ship to Trantor, Arcadia questions why the police let her go despite the search. The man reveals that he had bribed the officer with a large sum of money hidden in her papers. Arcadia worries that the officer could have taken the money and still turned her in. She contemplates her situation and the power of the Second Foundation, feeling the weight of her need to outwit them. Arcadia is determined to find a way to outsmart the Second Foundation and protect herself. 16. It is now the 32nd day since Arcadia left Terminus. Dr. Darrell discusses building a Symes-Molf resonator with Elvat Semic, and they consider the size and parts needed for the project. Lieutenant Deerage of Kalgan arrives with news about Arcadia, Dr. Darrell's daughter, who was last seen on Trantor. Dr. Darrell and Onther discuss the possibility that Arcadia's escape was arranged by the Second Foundation. Onther believes that Arcadia is safe on Trantor, but Dr. Darrell refuses to go there. They receive news of the Hober Mallow being attacked, signaling the start of the war between Kalgan and the Foundation. Onther asks Dr. Darrell if he will follow Arcadia's lead and move to Trantor, but Dr. Darrell decides to stay and face the uncertain future. 17. The mayor of the Foundation expressed regret for wasted years and missed opportunities. Dr. Darrell remained confident in the face of defeat. The mayor showed Darrell a model of the galaxy, highlighting the Foundation's control in yellow and Kalgan's in red. The mayor explained the strategic disadvantage of the Foundation's expanded territory compared to Kalgan's concentrated one. Darrell disagreed, relying on his interpretation of the Selden Plan and the Foundation's determination. Stettin, the Lord of Kalgan, examined a similar model and outlined his plan to wait and strike when the Foundation is spread thin. The First Minister suggested a quicker attack, but Stettin dismissed it. Stettin expressed confidence in the reports of his agents and the belief that there is no second Foundation. He returned to his chambers, thinking about Kalia and the necessity of keeping Homir Mun around. He pondered the proofs of the non-existent Second Foundation and dismissed any thoughts about Kalia's insight. 18. Trantor, once a magnificent capital, now lies in ruins. Survivors have returned to a primitive way of life, but remnants of the past still stand as a reminder. Arcadia longs to visit the Imperial Library, a sacred place where her family has a history. However, her adoptive parents discourage her from going. They fear disturbing the remains of the past. News of a war between Kalgan and the Foundation reaches Arcadia's ears. She learns that the Foundation is losing and fears for her father's safety. She contemplates how she can reach him amidst the war. Arcadia suggests that smugglers could profit by supplying food to the Foundation at high prices. After 2 weeks, Arcadia's adoptive father, Preem Palver, prepares for a mission to deliver food to the Foundation. His wife, Mama, protests but eventually accepts his decision. Arcadia asks Preem to find her father and deliver a message to him. She insists that he memorize the information and not write it down. As Preem leaves, Arcadia wonders if she has made a mistake and fears she may never see him again. She contemplates taking her own life as penance for bringing danger to her adoptive family. 19. War correspondent Joel Terbor interviews sailor Fennel Lemore amidst the ongoing war between the Foundation and Kalganians. The Foundation's planetary defenses and administrative efficiency improve, while the Kalganians struggle with occupying territory. The Third Fleet captures a prisoner named Preem Palver, suspected of espionage but vouched for by Terbor. The Foundation and Kalganian fleets approach each other in space, with the Foundation setting a trap dependent on the Kalganians' willingness to hold their position. Commander Sen's squadron appears and attacks the Kalganian rear, leading to chaos and a rat hunt-like pursuit. Only a small number of Kalganian ships make it back to Kalgan, while the Foundation loses 8 ships. Preem Palver accomplishes 2 things: securing a trade agreement between his cooperative and Terminus, and transferring important information to Dr. Darrell of Arcadia. Lord Stettin of Kalgan is frustrated and helpless, facing defeat and potential rebellion. First Minister Myrus tells Stettin that the Foundation cannot be defeated, as it is protected by the Selden Plan. Myrus advises Stettin to release Homir Mun and send him back to Terminus as an ambassador of peace. Stettin reluctantly agrees. Homir Mun leaves Kalgan escorted, having become an ambassador of peace. He reflects on how his concerns about the Second Foundation have changed and anticipates revealing the truth to Dr. Darrell and others. 20. In the last 2 months of the Statinian War, Homir found himself in the center of interstellar affairs as the mediator extraordinary. The war ended with little concessions from the Foundation, and the treaty was signed on an asteroid in Terminus' oldest naval base. Dr. Darrell returned to Terminus, and the 5 men who planned the war met at his house. Joel Terbor commented on Homir's success, and they discussed the war and the Second Foundation. Anther expressed his fear of the Second Foundation, accusing the others of celebrating prematurely. Mun claimed there was no Second Foundation and explained his reasoning. Anther disagreed and accused Mun of being an imposter. They compared encephalographic records and discovered that Mun had been tampered with by the Second Foundation. Anther revealed his theory that the Second Foundation was on Kalgan, but Daryl disagreed. Daryl explained his research on encephalographic analysis and the creation of a mental static device to mask the minds of the Second Foundation. They realized that they had not yet located the Second Foundation. Daryl revealed that he knew where the Second Foundation was, but did not disclose the location. 21. Daryl reveals his theory that the Second Foundation is located on Terminus, the same planet as the First Foundation. He explains that the galaxy is a flat, circular shape, and the First Foundation is located on one end of the circle. By following the rim of the circle, one would eventually come back to the starting point, which is where the Second Foundation is located. Anther, a member of the Second Foundation, confirms Daryl's theory. Daryl also demonstrates a mind-static device, which can cause extreme pain to members of the Second Foundation. They discuss what to do with the Second Foundation members and the implications of their defeat. Daryl also analyzes his daughter's brainwaves to ensure she is not under the control of the Second Foundation. In the end, they celebrate their victory and the realization that the First Foundation is now the sole master of the galaxy. 22. An unlocated room on an unlocated world. And a man whose plan had worked. The first speaker explained to the student the sacrifice of 50 martyrs who carried out the plan without weakening. The plan was for the First Foundation to believe they had destroyed the Second Foundation, allowing the Second Foundation to remain hidden and safe. The Kalganian War was used to restore the First Foundation's confidence and self-assuredness. The first speaker pointed out that the population of Terminus relied on the Second Foundation for protection, so their destruction had to happen after the war to prevent panic. The first speaker also addressed the concern about the mind-static device being in the hands of the First Foundation, stating that it would become a nearly forgotten item in a century. The student asked about the possibility of Dr. Daryl suspecting that Arcadia was a tool of the Second Foundation, but the first speaker explained that she was placed under control as an infant, making her unaware of her role. The first speaker emphasized the importance of the intricate intermeshings of the plan and the irony of the solution being based on social science rather than physical science. The first speaker revealed that the Second Foundation was located on Trantor, the center of the galaxy, and that Trantor's fall and destruction a century ago allowed the Second Foundation to protect their headquarters. The first speaker reflected on the significance of Trantor being called Star's End, and how all the universe was once guided from there. Now, the first speaker felt a somber satisfaction as the galaxy was safe forever.